Broadcasting from the Cass Corridor in Detroit, this is The Metro, a slice of news, culture, and conversation. I'm Robin Vincent.
And I'm Tia Graham. Today on the program, Detroit once had a thriving transit system that served nearly 2 million people.
With hundreds of buses and over 900 streetcars. So what happened, and how does Detroit revive and expand those thriving days of transit?
Also, Mayor Mike Duggan gave his last State of the City address last night. He touted his accomplishments and his work to build coalitions. We'll get some analysis. But first, student loan debt is massive in the U.S. It totals $1.7 trillion, and that is with a T, trillion dollars. And there are over 42 million student borrowers with federal loan debt. And the cost of tuition keeps going up. Since 2010, the cost of attending college has gone up more than 35%. After adjusting for currency inflation, college tuition has increased nearly 200% since 1963. Trump promised to dismantle the Department of Education when he was elected, and he has since cut the workforce in half and signed an executive order to shut the department down, saying education should fully be in the control of the states, not the federal government. And last week, he said administration of federal student loans would now be the responsibility of the Small Business Administration.
Tia, the Department of Education does a lot of things to support college students, at least it used to. One of its primary functions was to administer federal student loans and payment plans for college students and graduates. So think FAFSA, Pell, Public Service Loan Forgiveness, and income-driven repayments. Those programs helped make college accessible for students of all income levels. So what will happen to college accessibility and affordability now? Michelle Zampini is the Senior Director of College Affordability for the Institute of College Access and Success. Michelle, thank you for joining us on the Metro.
Thanks so much for having me.
So could you give us the 10,000-foot view of what the Department of Education does or did, specifically in regards to student loans?
Certainly. So the Education Department and its Office of Federal Student Aid is responsible through statute for administering the $1.6 trillion federal student loan portfolio. That means the disbursement of the loans for students, and that means managing the repayment process for borrowers, ensuring that borrowers are able to access affordable repayment options, access public service loan forgiveness, and access other relief programs. In addition, the Department of Education disperses all other forms of federal financial aid, including the Pell Grant program. And so the department really is the access point for students across the nation to be able to pay for college and afford college, and then to access affordable repayment options for any loans they had to take out.
Now, Michelle, why is it important for there to even be federal student loans? Why can't we let, say, the free market bear out student loans?
The Federal Student Loan Program is an incredibly important access tool that creates equity of opportunity for students who wouldn't otherwise be able to cover college costs out of pocket or through a privately run loan program. We did see there was a bank-based private lending program up until about 2010, and that was not providing the access that students needed. Private lenders had difficulty creating that access point, especially for students who had no credit history or whose family they did not feel were worthy to take on the debt. And so that is obviously not the purpose of the higher education system. And so the federal government was able to fully take over that program and say every student who wants to go to college should not have cost stand in the way. And the federal government is really the only entity that is able to provide access to that type of financing. And that has had really significant effects, again, on increasing access for students from lower income backgrounds and first generation students. And without that program, we would likely return to a higher education system that is accessible only to the wealthier few.
President Trump announced last week that he would move the entire federal student loan portfolio. out of the Department of Education and under the Small Business Administration. Do you have any read on how that change could affect prospective students who are trying to get loans to attend college?
Our understanding is this is not a comprehensive plan. This is not a well thought out approach to ensuring the system is functioning properly or making reforms to the system, but is instead throwing something at the wall to see what will stick. And our understanding is that it won't stick because it is first and foremost not within the administration's authority to make this change unilaterally without Congress stepping in. And again, it doesn't reflect an understanding of the complexity of the federal financial aid system. It doesn't reflect an understanding of the kind of expertise that the department had, and that was many of those folks were fired by the administration. And so there would be that real loss of the expertise and that real loss of understanding of how the system works. And with that will likely come a lot of difficulty for folks accessing aid, both on the front end, those who are still in college or looking to enroll in college for the first time. They may see processing delays with their ability to access funding. And then on the back end, for students who have already left school and who are trying to repay their loans, they will continue to see issues with loan servicing, issues with payment processing, issues with payment amounts being miscalculated. All of the things that we've seen will likely be amplified under this lack of plan that we're seeing play out.
Michelle, you're echoing what we've been hearing from a lot of advocates within the education world, and that is just the concerns that things are being eliminated or removed without there being a truly clear plan in place to replace them. And when we think about some of the issues that the Department of Education has had recently, it sounds to me like you're saying that they could be much worse than, I mean, I'm thinking about what happened with the FAFSA rollout, which was a bit of a nightmare. So let's talk about that for a moment. Did FAFSA ever get back to a functional baseline? And are you concerned about that as being something that could take an additional hit? And we should remind folks that that is the form that people need to fill out to get any kind of federal financial support for college.
Absolutely. There is no way that the dismantling or attempted dismantling of the department will not affect the FAFSA process. We did see a major effort to get the FAFSA back on track last administration, and things were in a much better place as of the end of the last FAFSA season. And now we can only imagine things will break and potentially break worse than they did before. Again, without the kind of technical expertise running the systems, without the customer support staff to help families and students who are calling in for assistance, and with all the uncertainty and chaos around, will these programs still be in existence? Where is Congress's role? Are these things legal? What is the administration doing day to day? All of that chaos has real effects on families and students. And I'm hearing a lot of concerns about, will these programs even still be available to me for the next semester? Will these loans be available? Will these grants still be available? And while these loans and grants are Congress would have to step in. They are legally required and legally mandated, and so they do have to be provided, and there has not been any move to take the aid away. Because the aid may not be properly administered, that concern is very real for families, and I think that also has an effect on folks' ability to engage with the system and to say, I don't want to take that financial risk on if I can't rely on the federal government to uphold its end of the process. And our concern is especially folks who need especially grant aid and loan aid to enroll in college may decide not to, just because of all of the chaos swirling, and that is a real shame, and we're very concerned about that.
You're listening to The Metro on WDET. I'm Robin Vincent.
And I'm Tia Graham. We're trying to make sense of the status of federal student loans. Our guest is Michelle Zampini, Senior Director of College Affordability for the Institute of College Access and Success. Now, Michelle, let's move on to another area where Biden tried to expand forgiveness and affordability, but Trump is pulling back, income-driven repayment. What has changed and what has not?
Sure. So income-driven repayment plans are essentially a affordable repayment option for borrowers whose regular loan payments month to month would be unaffordable. Income-driven repayment plans have been in existence for several decades, and they have been successful in helping borrowers stay on track and stay out of default, especially when folks face shorter-term economic hardship, or they have a job loss, or some kind of economic issue where they are then able to put their loans on essentially a payment plan so that they can stay active in repayment and stay part of the paying down their balance without the payment being unaffordable and forcing them to choose between covering other bills. So we have seen attacks on the system from the Trump administration, and we are starting to see some similar concern from congressional Republicans. There is, I would say, a misconception that these plans are too generous to borrowers, when in fact the plans actually reflect a lot of research and a lot of evidence that, again, they help borrowers stay on track. And so they are enabling people to stay in the repayment system instead of going into delinquency or defaulting on their loans. And so part of that is ensuring that the monthly payment calculation that borrowers are expected to pay is actually affordable for them based on their income and family status. And that is what is really under threat, is what is an affordable payment and whether those balances after a certain amount of time will be forgiven. Up until now, since the early 1990s, the system has said if you've made payments for 25 years, a maximum of 25 years, any debt that remains, the government will write off. And that is a really long time to keep someone in loan repayment, and most borrowers will repay their debt before they hit that timeline. However, there are proposals on the table, again, from congressional Republicans to eliminate that kind of time-based exemption and that kind of statute of limitations type 25-year endpoint. And so we are extremely concerned about how that would affect borrowers, and especially, again, how that would affect families with lower incomes.
And similar vein here, what about Pell Grants? What impact do they have on accessibility for students, especially those who are at risk?
Pell Grants are the single most important program that the federal government has for college access for students from low-income backgrounds. And so the Pell Grant program is essentially the cornerstone of our federal financial aid system, and it's what enables so many students every year. It's the difference between not being able to go to college and being able to go to college. And there are more than 7 million American students each year that benefit from Pell Grants, and Pell Grants have enjoyed a long history of bipartisan support, and they are an extremely popular and extremely effective program. And so we are very hopeful that there continues to be recognition of the importance of the Pell Grant program. But again, if there are issues with administering financial aid, or there are breakdowns in FAFSA administration or things like that, that could affect students' ability to have those funds accessible. We hope that doesn't become the case, but we are watching out for what that effect might be.
And just spitballing here and going a little bit further into it, you say 7 million students would be impacted by the Pell Grant if it does go away or something happens to it. Are there any other things that we could see for low-income students or first-time students that are federally distributed that we see could possibly be under attack as well?
There are other smaller aid programs that are grant programs. There's, for example, the Federal Work Study Program, which is not a grant program, but is an additional program that helps kind of close that affordability gap for a lot of students. Many students who receive those funds also receive Pell Grants, and so they are trying to kind of close that gap between what aid you're receiving from either the federal government, from your state, or from your institution, and then what that college cost is on the back end for you. And so there are smaller but no less important programs that are also potentially at risk. And again, we hope that the members of Congress that are responsible for administering these programs and funding these programs understand that this aid is the difference for so many students between being able to try college and not being able to try college at all.
And this is the same question, but it goes for the same folks who are enrolled in the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program as well.
Certainly. So that is really for folks who have come through the other end of their college experience and are in the repayment system and are working some kind of public service job and are looking to receive relief after 120 payments. So that's 10 years of payments. And that was promised to them through the contract that they signed when they took out the debt with the federal government. And it's mandated in law. It's legally required that they have those benefits given to them if they meet the qualifications. And so we are still seeing that those discharges, those relief programs are being administered for students. Students are still seeing that forgiveness as they earn it. But again, without the expertise to manage the system, and without people who have an understanding of the complexity of the system, making sure that those forgiveness totals are being tracked, making sure borrowers are being approved when they qualify, all of that could start to roll back for borrowers. Again, we are hopeful that that won't be the case, but any kind of major transition to another federal agency, any kind of major loss of staff like we've seen at the education department, all of that means that there are a lot fewer people who understand how to get borrowers these benefits, which they are legally entitled to.
Yeah, and Michelle, with all this uncertainty we're talking about around federal student loans and the threat of the privatization of college loans, I imagine some prospective students are wondering if college is worth it right now. What do you think? Is the degree worth the debt right now?
I would always encourage someone, if they want to try college or if they want to enroll in college, that is absolutely what they should do. And there are still, all of these programs do still exist. So the Pell Grant program does still exist. There is still funding available. The student loan program does still exist. And for all of its repayment issues, the federal student loan program does offer the best kind of loan access for students, far better than anything the private sector would offer. There are also continue to be a lot of state programs that, states have stepped up and have a lot of free college programs or free community college or some kind of tuition assistance for students. So I would say that any student who has the goal of enrolling in college, I would hate to see that they don't reach that goal just because of what's happening with the federal government. So I would say, certainly be aware, be proactive, be careful, maximize the grant aid that you can receive, look at all of your different options and see what kind of scholarships and aid are available through those channels. But do not give up on your goal of enrolling in college, because it does pay a lot of dividends. And the worst thing that could happen from all of this is students who are looking ahead to their future to build that future for themselves choose not to, just because of the actions of the federal government.
Michelle Zambini is the Senior Director of College Affordability for the Institute of College Access and Success. Michelle, thank you so much for joining us on The Metro.
Thank you so much.
From the WDET newsroom, Michigan retailers say sales fell sharply in February. Analysts blame uncertainty and inconsistency with threats of tit-for-tat tariffs between the U.S. and its major trading partners. Despite the decline, the Michigan Retailers Association says most of its members are optimistic about sales over the next 3 months. And we're talking about trains and all things Detroit Transit in our next hour. But this fall, you can discover the Canadian Rockies by train with WDET. Learn more about the October trip with WDET at an online Q&A session. It's Monday, March 31st. You can register for the presentation at WDET.org.
And in sports, the Pistons beat the San Antonio Spurs 122-96 at the Little Caesars Arena. Another victory will triple last season's win total and clinch their first winning season since 2016. Lots of things seem like they're coming back around from 2016, if you know what I mean. The Tigers lost to the San Francisco Giants 4-3 in their final spring training game. They'll start the regular season tomorrow night against the Dodgers in Los Angeles. Looking forward to it. In college basketball, Grand Valley State takes on Pittsburgh State in the Final Four of the NCAA Division II women's tournament tonight. And in the NHL, the Colorado Avalanche buried the Red Wings 5-2 in Denver. In Denver, in your old home state.
Yes. Tia, as much as I loved living in Denver, I could not get behind rooting for any of those teams, any of those great teams. The Avalanche or the Nuggets could never do it. I felt like a traitor.
No, it was the Detroit, and you couldn't get that out of you. What are you doing?
Never. Coming up at 11, Detroit's transit options are very fragmented. There's the People Mover, the Q Line, and then we have various bus systems controlled by different entities. We'll discuss why that is, and we want to hear from you. What would convince you to take public transit in Detroit? What do the city and the suburbs need to do to create a system that feels truly connective? Call in. The number is 313-577-1019. Tia, what do you want when it comes to public transit?
I can't brag about a lot of, I'm not a civil engineer. I can't brag about that. However, if I could figure anything out, honestly, it just would be that we have more walkable spaces, more places that we could walk to a shop here and cross the street and go there, wherever it may be, just less vehicles in a space where we can just have a walkable, comfortable environment. I love the Dequindre Cut. I love certain things like that. So if we had like a mix of like the Dequindre Cut with shops and different things that we could do, and even having some of it covered as well, I just think that there needs to be more space for us to walk and be in community with one another, because that's something that I'm striving for.
So you want more walkable places over transit. Now tell me this. What if you could take a high-speed rail from your house to work at WDET each morning? And let's say you had a nice walk to get there too.
Yeah, I'd do it.
You could relax on that drive instead of being a speed demon on Jefferson.
I was going to say I would definitely do it for that reason. So you're not as stressed coming into work. Someone else is going to get you there reliably.
No parking.
Like the stress of all of that goes away. So that really helps. I think that would help. So yes, a speed. What'd you say? Speed rail?
A light rail. Yeah.
A light rail. I would take that in pretty much anywhere.
Okay. You heard Tia Graham and her request.
Yeah, get me one to East Lansing now. I need to go to East Lansing regularly. Come on.
We'll talk to the powers that be about this shortly.
Up next, the Detroit Symphony Orchestra has released its first album in a decade. It's a blues symphony recorded and pressed on vinyl right in Detroit. We'll hear from the president of the DSO and hear some selections from that album. That's next on the Metro. Stay right there.